Hi, friends. You're listening to the Happiness Soundtrack. My name is Jana Barrett, but you can call me Jana Banana. I'm a commercial flight attendant who's fascinated by the associations we form with music. And for me, one of those associations got too strong. So for my birthday in 2024, I decided to spend a full year listening only to music I'd never heard before. To find new songs, I started passing around a journal, asking people to write about a song that reminds them of a happy memory. And those songs are what I call the Happiness Soundtrack. I try to ask at least one person a day, and I'll keep going until every page of that journal is full. This is where I share some of the songs, the stories, and the beautiful moments that unfold from that one simple question. If you'd like to get a link to these stories in your inbox every week, along with all the show notes, you can subscribe to emails at happinesssoundtrack.com. There's a link in the show notes. The website also has more details about the project, like monthly playlists of every song in the journal, and a submission page where you can share your song. So check that out when you get a chance. Today we're going to talk about the 5 happiest songs according to science, as well as why science says they are the happiest. You might have noticed that the title of this episode is a little bit different from what I told you about last week. I did originally record both the 5 happiest songs as well as 14 research-backed methods for improving happiness. But when I recorded all of that, it ended up being more than an hour long. And I know there are podcasts out there that have hour-long episodes, but that's not what I'm going for here. So I figured it would be better to split it into 2. So today we're only going to talk about the 5 happiest songs, and next week I will share those 14 research-backed methods for how you can enhance your happiness. So here we go. All right, the 5 happiest songs according to science. We all have songs that make us happy due to the emotional context from our lives. Obviously, that's what the whole project is about. But apparently, there are 5 songs that elicit a positive response in all of us, regardless of emotional context. I discovered these a few months ago when I was trying to check my own SEO for the website, which is happinesssoundtrack.com. If you're not familiar with what SEO means, that stands for search engine optimization, and that means how your website shows up in search results. So I was Googling terms like happy songs and happy memory songs, stuff like that, and one of the top search results was this article from Inc.com. The full title is "Science Says Listening to These 5 Songs Will Make You Remarkably Happy." So obviously that intrigued me. First, I'm going to outline what all those songs are, and then I'll explain how and why they make us happy. Due to copyright and licensing, I can't play any of them here, even as short clips, but I found a creative workaround. You're welcome. There is a website called Signal where I was able to create some decent MIDI files of the basic melodies. I don't know what MIDI stands for actually, but it's a file type. That's good trivia. I should find that out. So it's a file type for music, and thanks to my 6 years of piano lessons as a kid and my inability to read music, I was able to kind of sound out how to play these on piano. You know, to be honest, I don't remember ever really understanding how to read music, and I've always just kind of gone based on how it sounds. So, that was a fun challenge. It was time consuming. I worked really hard on it, and ultimately they're like subpar at best, but I tried, and they're just meant to give you an understanding of what those songs are. Some of them will be familiar to you, I believe. Anyway, if you'd like to get a playlist of all those songs and hear the actual versions, which are worlds better than mine, there is a link to that playlist in the show notes. It's on Spotify. But if you have Apple Music, it would be amazing if you could create that playlist on Apple. It's only 5 songs. If you do that, please send it to me and I'll link to that as well. And I will happily give you a shout out on the podcast and the Instagram for doing us all a huge favor. All right, so as per Inc.com, the 5 happiest songs according to science are as follows. Number 1 is Clair de Lune by Debussy. Let me just apologize for my North American English dialect, because I know that's not how you pronounce this guy's name. But I'm not French, I don't speak French, I don't know much about how to pronounce French. So that is the way I say it, and I know that's the way we would pronounce it here in the US. So that's what we're going to go with here on the podcast. All right, so that song goes like this. Okay. Um, Honestly, it gets better. That was the first song that I tried to sound out on the little MIDI keyboard, and it's not the greatest, but it does the trick. So you understand the basic melody, and you're probably familiar with it. There are several versions of this song, like on piano, harp, cello, guitar, and more, I'm sure. But my personal favorite is a piano version by Martin Jones, so that's what I saved in the playlist. Now, I did some digging and I have discovered some of the emotional context for this piece. The name of the song is French for moonlight. It was written in 1890 as part of a four-movement composition called Suite Bergamasque. Again, I'm not French. I probably butchered that pronunciation, but that's how it looks in North American English. The entire piece was inspired by a poem by Paul Verlaine, which was also called Clair de Lune. And that collection of his poetry, called Fête Galante, as far as I'm aware, was inspired by impressionistic paintings by Jean-Antoine Watteau. I do apologize for the pronunciation or lack thereof. Those paintings were of idyllic landscape settings in the French countryside, and the people were sometimes dressed in costume. In the poems, Verlaine describes the subjects as appearing happy but being sad underneath the facade. So the poems and the music have subtle suggestions of mingled sorrow and beauty. I imagine it would be quite an experience to view one of those paintings while hearing someone recite the poems, either in English or French, and listening to Clair de Lune playing in the background. I don't know how to Google such a thing, but if there's an event like that, I would love to get a ticket. If you find out, let me know, please. So the second song is Piano Sonata Number 17 in D minor by Beethoven, and that is referred to as the Tempest. Here's a little clip of that. Okay. See, we're getting better. By the way, the reason that song clip stops where it does is because that song was incredibly difficult to pretend to learn. Like, I tried finding sheet music for it and piecing together which notes came next based on what I could glean from the sheet music. But like I told you, I was never good at reading it, and that's probably why I never quite learned it. And I also tried to find YouTube videos where, like, you could see the people's hands moving on the keys, but it goes so fast. And, like, all of the videos, no matter how many times I rewound it or, like, tried to find just the part that I was confused on, I couldn't I couldn't piece it together, so I just, like, gave up and said, "Okay, that's gonna have to be good enough." Um, there's mixed research on The Tempest being what Beethoven called it. In fact, I wanna say that there's no record of him calling it that, but I believe his assistant started calling it that, and that's what it became known for because that's a lot easier to remember than Piano Sonata Number 17 in D minor. But it was composed in 1802 when Beethoven was becoming increasingly aware of going deaf, and that emotional turbulence is certainly present in the music. That is probably why they called it The Tempest, because it sounds like a storm, if not a rainstorm, then an emotional storm for sure. I also want to recommend an episode about Beethoven and how he wrote music while going deaf. That's on the podcast 20,000 Hertz, and this was recommended to me by my friend Anne, so thank you, Anne. That tells much more of the fascinating story, and can't recommend it enough. Okay, song 3 is Adagio for Strings, Opus 11 by Samuel Barber. Opus is abbreviated as OP. At first I thought it was opera, but I wanted to make sure that I was saying that correctly, so I looked it up, and no, it stands for opus, which means a musical composition. So here's how that goes. So this piece was written in 1936, and ironically, as you might have guessed from hearing it, it has been touted as the saddest piece of music ever written. Probably wondering why it's on this list, and I don't blame you. Yep, don't worry, we'll get to that, I promise. Adagio has been played at funerals like FDR, Einstein, Princess Grace, as well as tributes to JFK after his assassination and the victims of September 11th. Perhaps part of what makes this song so appealing is its unique ability to provide space for grief. It seems that the music's gradual crescendo and the increasing tension allow listeners to confront and process loss and suffering. Some believe that the emotional intensity of Adagio is due in part to the composer's personal struggles, such as pressure to hide his homosexuality. Again, it was written in 1936, and it just wasn't safe. It wasn't safe in culture or society at the time to admit to being homosexual. So understandably, that would put a lot of emotional stress on a person. The melody of the song and the emotional tension could also be an expression of the global unrest at the time. The US was reeling from the Great Depression, and Europe was a few years away from entering World War II. And Barber was a US citizen living in Europe at the time. So he might have felt like there was nowhere to escape all of the sadness and the unrest. I mean, who knows? That's just a guess. Okay, the fourth song on the list of the 5 happiest songs, according to science, is Adagio for Strings by Tiesto. Sounds familiar? Yes, it is a techno version of the previous song, which was adapted in 2005. I did not make a sample of this one on my little MIDI keyboard. You already understand what that song is supposed to sound like. So try to imagine that as techno, which I know is pretty much impossible. You should really go listen to the real version. Again, that's in the playlist linked in the show notes. One interesting aspect is that the time signature in the Tiesto version is 4/4 rather than 3/4. That means there are 4 beats per measure and each note is 1/4 of the duration. Songs with that time signature have more of a rhythmic, marching feel to them. And because of that, this adaptation has a whole different energy to it. At the same time, it retains the emotional depth of the original score. And to me, this version of the same melody evokes more determination than sorrow. That's my interpretation of it, but you should definitely go listen to it. Give it a chance. Like, it builds, as most techno and electronic music does. All right, the 5th and final song on the list is called First Breath After Coma by Explosions in the Sky. As a perfectionist, I have to point out how much it bugs me that it's not First Breath After a Coma. I don't understand. No one consulted me when they titled the song. But I'm going to play a clip of that for you in 1 second, but I do want to prepare you. The first 20 seconds or so of the song will be a little bit uncomfortable, and it's supposed to be. I had never heard the song before. From all the research I read, it is meant to evoke the emotions one experiences or might experience upon waking up from a coma or at birth. It's meant to kind of sound like developing an awareness or waking up in a hospital room or being born in a hospital room. And so the first several seconds are meant to sound like a heart rate monitor beeping. Okay, so again, give it a chance, give it some time to build because it does get better after that. This is on the opening track to the album, The Earth Is Not a Cold Dead Place, which is often interpreted as a journey through life. The song's structure and the musical elements are meant to mirror the process of gaining awareness, as I said, and the gradual buildup of layers and instrumentation represents the slow and steady return of one's consciousness and the awareness of physical sensations. It's a really interesting piece, very beautiful. I have not listened to the full album yet, but I'm really intrigued just based on this opening track alone. And that's the job of a good opening track. It makes you want to hear the whole thing. So those are the 5 songs and the stories behind them. But why do they make us happy? Especially when some of them have such sad origins and sound very mournful. In the original article by Inc.com, they cite a study by the Montreal Neurological Institute and Hospital, which reveals that listening to music releases dopamine. In case you don't know, dopamine is a neurotransmitter that the brain releases during pleasurable or enjoyable experiences. For example, dopamine might be released when you eat something tasty or if you experience any sort of pleasant physical sensation. It's part of the brain's reward system, and it helps reinforce pleasurable behaviors in order to encourage repetition. That is how it's involved in learning and habit formation, whether that's for better or worse. Physiologically speaking, dopamine is released whenever the parts of the brain tied to anticipation and pleasure are stimulated. There are also studies that show that listening to our favorite songs will release dopamine, but all of these songs exemplify a mastery of anticipation and release, which is exactly what stimulates the reward center of the brain. So that explains why each of these songs were shown to increase dopamine in all of the subjects of the study, even if they'd never heard the songs before, and even if they were not among those subjects' favorite music. So there you have the science behind the music. I hope you found this interesting. When I searched for this article again in order to share it with you, I found several similar articles with other songs that are purported to be the happiest. So apparently there are a ton of songs that science claims will elevate your mood for different reasons. I won't share them all here on the podcast, but I will link to some of those articles. Ironically, there is another list on Inc.com which outlines the 10 happiest songs, but that is from a different study. It's more about songs that evoke fun and upbeat emotions rather than the production and release of dopamine. So if you'd like to dig deeper, there is also a fascinating article from Wired.com which discusses the neuroscience of music, as well as one from Pfizer called How and Why Music Moves Us. Again, those are linked in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. I have some questions for you. First of all, which of these 5 songs do you connect with the most, and why is that? For me, it's the Adagio for Strings by Barber. Even though it's the saddest song, I just feel like it provides a space to put grief and sadness. I probably mentioned this already, but it's just like you can feel all these negative emotions and you don't really know what to do with them. But then when you hear a song like that, it just kind of feels like, oh, that's the place where they go. Does that make sense? I don't want to say you can confine it to a song, but it just feels like the right thing to play while you're processing negative emotions. So I really appreciated that discovery. I also wanted to ask, what is a song you listen to when you need to emotionally recharge? There's a specific reason why I'm asking that question. It's for kind of like a mini side quest project that I'm working on related to the Happiness soundtrack, and I'm putting together a playlist. So whatever songs help you emotionally recharge, however you want to interpret that, please send them to me. There are a few ways to do so. If you're listening on Spotify or YouTube, just drop a comment. Or if you're on Instagram, connect with me at Happiness Soundtrack and comment on the post for this episode. Feel free to DM me as well, and you can always tell me about your song. I would love to hear your story. As for my stories, I share a new one every Monday, and next week I will tell you the 14 scientifically proven ways to increase your happiness. You can listen to all the stories on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube, or you can read the blog at happinesssoundtrack.com. I hope this episode made you smile, and I would love to hear what you thought of it. I I kind of feel disingenuous because in this episode, a lot of it was me reading the key takeaways from an article that I read, but that article doesn't mention anything about the background of the songs. That was all research that I did out of curiosity and to help understand why the songs sound the way they do, I guess. So if you like this sort of thing, let me know. If you like these scientifically proven things related to happiness and music, let me know about that because I can try and do more of those. Whatever your thoughts, feel free to leave a rating or review on Apple or Spotify. You can also hit the like button or subscribe to the channel on YouTube. And thank you very much for your support. I'm glad you're having a good time here. Have a great week, and I'll be back next Monday with a song and a smile.